We're on the Sealed Nectar, and it is a biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and it's a Patreon requested book. We are in the section called The Lineage and Family of Muhammad, peace be upon him, a symbol. Okay, with respect to the lineage of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there are three levels. The first, whose correctness is agreed upon by biographers and genealogists, states that Muhammad's genealogy has been traced to Adnan. The second, subject to various disagreements, traces his lineage beyond Adnan back to Ibrahim. The third version, with some parts definitely incorrect, traces his lineage beyond Ibrahim, peace be upon him, back to Adam, peace be with him. Some of these points have been mentioned earlier. Here are the details of these three sections of lineage. First, Muhammad bin Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib, who was called Shayba bin Hashim, named Amir bin Abd Manaf, called Al-Muhira bin Qusay, also called Zayd bin Kalib, bin Murrah bin Kaib bin Loi bin Galib bin Fir, who was called Quraysh and whose tribe was named after him, bin Malik bin An-Nadr, also called Qais, bin Kinana bin Khuzaimah bin Mudrika, who was called Amir bin Elias bin Mudar bin Nizar bin Ma'ad bin Adnan. The second, Adnan bin Ad bin Humaysi bin Salaman bin Aus bin Buz bin Kamwal bin Ubay bin Awam bin Nashid bin Haza bin Bildas bin Yadlaf bin Tabik bin Jahim bin Nahish bin Maiki bin Aid bin Abakar bin Ubaid bin Adda'a bin Hamdan bin Sanbir bin Yathrabi bin Yazin bin Yalhan bin Arawi bin Aid bin Dashan bin Asir bin Afnad bin Ayham bin Muksar bin Naith bin Zareh bin Sami bin Mazi bin Auda bin Arum bin Kaidar bin Ishmael, son of Ibrahim, peace be upon him. The third, beyond Ibrahim, peace be with him, Ibn Tari Azar bin Nahar bin Saru, or Saru bin Rau bin Falik bin Abir bin Salik bin Arfakshad bin Sam bin Noah bin Lamik bin Mutawalash bin Aknuk Enoch, who was said to be the prophet Idris, bin Yared bin Mahla'il bin Canaan bin Anusha bin Shith bin Adam. The prophetic family. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is called the Hashite family, after his grandfather Hashim bin Abd Manaf. Let us now speak a little about Hashim and his descendants. Hashim, as we have already previously mentioned, he was the one responsible for giving food and water to the pilgrims. This had been his charge when the sons of Abd Manaf and those of Abdud Dar compromised on dividing the duties between them. Hashim was wealthy and honest. He was the first to offer the pilgrims salt bread and broth, delicious. His first name was Amir, but he was called Hashim because he had been in the practice of crumbling bread for the pilgrims. He was also the first man who started Quraysh's 2 journeys of summer and winter. It has been narrated that he went to Syria as a merchant. Upon his return, he went to Medina, where he married Salma, the daughter of Amir from Bani Adi bin an-Najjar. He stayed with her in Medina for some time, then he left for Syria, again while she was pregnant. He died in Gaza in Palestine in 497 CE. Later, his wife gave birth to Abdul Muttalib and named him Shayba because of the white hair on his head, and brought him up in her father's house in Medina. None of his family in Makkah learned of his birth. Hashim had 4 sons, Asad, Abu Saifi, Nadla, and Abdul Muttalib, and 5 daughters, Ashifa, Khalida, Daifa, Ruqya, and Jannah. Number 2, Abdul Muttalib. We have already learned that after the death of Hashim, the charge of the pilgrims' food and water went to his brother Al-Muttalib bin Abd Manaf, who was honest, generous, and trustworthy. When Abdul Muttalib reached the age of boyhood, his uncle Al-Muttalib heard of him and went to Medina to bring him to Mecca. When he saw him, tears filled his eyes and rolled down his cheeks. He embraced him and took him on his camel. The boy, however, abstained from going with him to Mecca until he took his mother's consent. Good. Gotta ask your mom. Al-Muttalib asked her to send the boy with him to Mecca, but she refused. He managed to convince her, saying, "Your son is going to Mecca to restore his father's authority and to live in the vicinity of the sacred house." There in Mecca, people wondered at seeing Abdul Muttalib, and they considered him the slave of Muttalib. Al-Muttalib said, "He is my nephew, the son of my brother Hashim." The boy was brought up in Al-Muttalib's house. But later on, Al-Muttalib died in Bardman in Yemen, so Abdul Muttalib took over and managed to maintain his people's prestige and outdo his grandfathers in his honorable behavior, which gained him Mecca's deep love and high esteem. When Al-Muttalib died, Naufal, without right, took hold of the duties of Abdul Muttalib. So the latter asked for help from the Quraysh, but they abstained from extending any sort of support to either of them. Consequently, he wrote to his uncles of Bani an-Najjar, his mother's brothers, to come to his aid. His uncle, Abu Sa'id bin Adi, his mother's brother, marched to Mecca at the head of 80 horsemen and camped in Abata in Mecca. The squad's coming in, fam. Abdul Muttalib received the men and invited them to go to his house. But Abu Sa'id said, "Not before I meet Naufal." He found Naufal sitting with some old men of Quraysh in the shade of the Kaaba. Abu Sa'id drew his sword and said, "I swear by Allah that if you don't restore my nephew what you have taken, I will kill you with this sword." Naufal was thus forced to give up what he had adopted unlawfully, and the notables of the Quraysh were made to witness to his words. Abu Sa'id then said to Abdul Muttalib's house, where he stayed for 3 nights, performed Umrah, and left to return to Medina. Later on, Naufal entered into an alliance with Bani Abid Shams bin Abid Manaf against Bani Hashim. When Khuza'a tribe saw Bani an-Najjar's support to Abdul Muttalib, they said, "He is our son as he is yours. We have more reasons to support him than you." Abid Manaf's mother was one of them. They went into An-Nadwa house and entered into an alliance with Bani Hashim against Bani Abd Shams and Naufal. It was an alliance that was later to constitute the main reason for the conquest of Mecca. A lot of people want to conquer that place. Wow. Abdul Muttalib did witness 2 important events in his lifetime, namely digging the Zamzam well and the elephant raid. In brief, Abdul Muttalib received an order in his dream to dig the Zamzam well in a particular place. He did that and found that things that the Jahrum men buried there when they were forced to evacuate Mecca. He found the swords, armor, and the 2 deer of gold. The gate of the Kaaba was stamped from the gold swords and the 2 deer. And then the tradition of providing Zamzam water to pilgrims was established. That's cool. When the well of Zamzam gushed water forth, the Quraysh made a claim to partnership in the enterprise. But Abdul Muttalib refused their demands on the grounds that Allah had singled only him out for this honorable job. To settle the dispute, they agreed to consult Bani Sa'id's diviner. On their way, Allah showed them his sign that confirmed Abdul Muttalib's privilege about the sacred spring. Only then did Abdul Muttalib make a solemn vow to sacrifice one of his adult children to the Kaaba if he had 10. But did he really do that though? The second event was that of Abraha as-Saba al-Habashi, the Abyssinian Ethiopian viceroy in Yemen. He had seen that the Arabs made their pilgrimage to the Kaaba, so he built a large church in Sana'a in order to attract the Arab pilgrims to it, to the exclusion of Mecca. He's trying to open up a competitor. A man from the Kinana tribe understood his motive. Therefore he entered the church under the cover of night, smearing excrement on its front wall. When Abraham learned of this, he became enraged and led a great army of 60,000 warriors to demolish the Kaaba. Oh no. He chose the biggest elephant for himself. Dang, the biggest elephant, bro. His army included between 9 and 30 elephants. He continued marching until he reached a place called Al-Magmas. There he mobilized his army and prepared his elephants to enter Mecca. When he reached the Muhassir Valley between Muzdalifa and Mina, the elephant knelt down and refused to go forward. Whenever they directed it to the north, south, or east, the elephant moved quickly, but when directed towards the Kaaba in the west, it knelt down. Meanwhile, Allah sent birds in flights upon them, throwing forcefully stones of baked clay upon them and made them like scattered chaff. These birds were very much like swallows and sparrows, each carrying 3 stones, 1 in its beak and 2 in its claws. The stones hit Abraha's men and cut their limbs and killed them. A large number of Abraha's soldiers were killed in this way, and the others fled at random and died everywhere. Abraha himself had an infection that required his fingertips to be cut off. When he reached Sa'ana, he was in a miserable state and died soon after. The Qurayshites fled for their lives to the hills and mountain tops. When the enemy was routed, they returned home safely. The elephant incident took place in the month of Al-Muharram, 50 or 55 days before the birth of Prophet Muhammad, peace be with him, which corresponds to late February or early March 571 CE. It was a gift from Allah to his Prophet and his family. It could actually be regarded as divine auspicious sign of the light to come and accompany the advent of the Prophet, peace be with him, and his family. By contrast, Jerusalem had suffered the atrocities of Allah's enemies. Here we can recall Bukhtanasar in BC 587 and the Romans in 70 CE. The Kaaba, by divine grace, never came under the hold of the Christians, the Muslims of that time, although Mecca was populated by polytheists. Wow. Holy moly. There's a lot of action. Who is this Bukhtanasar guy? I need to read something about him. Wow, everybody wants to control the Kaaba. Everybody wants that. I didn't realize that. We don't have a place like that in the United States where a place is so special. Don't say the White House. Nobody really cares about the White House. It's not a holy place. All right, family. Yes.